Hello everyone, my name is Pearson and I am currently studying in my first year at PGDM in Fortune Institute of International Business. Today we have with us Professor Vibhor Kataria, who is a professor of business communication at Fortune Institute of International Business. Sir has an experience of 17 years working with leading publishing houses such as Macmillan, Pearson Education Services and McGraw Hill. Today we will be talking about business communication and how it is relevant for a PGDM student. We welcome you here, sir.
Thank you.
So we'll just get started. So my first question is, why is business communication important for a PGDM student?
Great. Thanks so much, Piyush. It's a pleasure to be here. Why is business communication important? Well, business communication is important because there are two parts of it. One is students of the management program will be working in different businesses or corporates, and in order to be effective, you need to communicate. So if I was to just in a nutshell say, business communication is important because you have to communicate, you have to get your point across effectively, you have to be able to make an impact with whatever you are delivering, whatever you are discussing. So that would be the crux of why business communication is important. But I'd just like to go back a little bit, and I'll just go back to when I started my academic career. So I was always interested in academics, and having worked for publishing houses, my background became such that I was in touch with academics, I was in touch with academia. And I got an opportunity to speak with students, discuss with students many a times. So that was a trigger point for me to actually, look at teaching in a management institute as a career opportunity at some point in my life. So finally it happened about three and a half years back. So that was just to give a background and the context, setting a context. But when I came in, typically, business communication is associated with English proficiency, the ability to communicate effectively in the language. However, now we're just stepping a little bit aside. We try to emphasize why is business communication important, but we're just going back a little now. What is business communication? So business communication is not to be, I wouldn't say misunderstood, but not to be construed as proficiency in the English language. Language, as philosophically I always have been saying, language is a means to the end. So the end is not language proficiency, the end is business communication. So now what exactly is business communication? So I'd just like to, just in order to make this interactive and conversational, what do you think would be an answer to the question that what exactly is effective communication?
Effectively conveying your message to the person you're talking to.
All right. Okay.
I'll say that.
Okay. So, well, absolutely. But if I was to just dig a little bit deeper into that thought, to be able to communicate effectively, it's about having a control on your thoughts and then being able to express those thoughts effectively. And that does not necessarily mean to be able to express those thoughts in the English language. Language could be any, but it is the ability of articulating your thoughts and being able to express it effectively. Now, the question now lies is, not exactly the question, the point that lies is that आपने सुना होगा बात को पहले तोलो और फिर मुंह से बोलो. So a lot of the communication that really happens is happening in the mind, and that's what I firmly believe. And to make it effective, you need to anticipate what your response will be to whatever you've just communicated to your listener. So for example, मैं भी आपको जो बता रहा हूँ, my thoughts need to be working super fast so that my mind is able to anticipate in response to what I just said, what you are going to going to ask back, and then what my response is going to be to whatever you ask me. So there has to be a tremendous amount of control on your thoughts. Once you have control on your thoughts, expression over a period of time will improve automatically. So now we've got 2 points that we've addressed on the table. What is business communication? The ability to communicate effectively. Why business communication? Because you are going to be in the corporate, or for that matter, wherever you might be, you have to be able to communicate effectively. So those are 2 important elements, and I'll just leave it up to, pass the baton on to you if you have any clarifications on these points.
Yes, sir. So now that we know what and why is business communication important, so what are the nuances of effective business communication, as to how we see as to how effective business communication can happen and how we can proceed to have effective business communication?
Very good point. Very good point. So I'll just have to repeat myself there, and I'll just go a little bit into the pedagogy about how business communication needs to be executed. So as far as the nuances are concerned, as I mentioned earlier, it has to be a control on your thoughts. You need to be able to streamline, structure, and align your thoughts effectively to make up as nuances for effective communication. So that is one element. And in order to be able to achieve, typically it's like, ठीक है आपने बता तो दिया, अब इसको करना कैसे है? Typically what my experience has been, once I have been teaching for the last few years, particularly the subject of business communication, my experience tells me that business communication needs to be taught more in terms of a problem-solving methodology, a problem-solving approach. So again, it's not about write a letter to the director of the institute asking for a leave. It is about articulating your thoughts about what needs to be communicated effectively in terms of why the leave application, or how would you convince the director of the institute to grant you leave. So it's more about a problem solving approach than to just randomly come up with topics and try to focus more on the language part. It needs to be a focus more on the thought and the business solving, the problem solving approach, which is more critical.
So, sir, now that we know that we have to keep on focus the problem solving ability. So, if someone who's had a Hindi medium background, or if someone who's not very fluent in English, so what would you tell them as to how they can improve their business communication skills and in the corporate world, and how they can reach at the top with not a very good fluency in English?
Right, that's a wonderful point again, and a lot of the population will not have the advantage of having been educated in a metropolitan, jahan pe typically the exposure to the language and the exposure to the proficiency is better, obviously, because the environment is such. For people coming from a vernacular background, my very staunch and my very motivating and encouraging response to that would be that do not be bogged down by any sort of complex that you've not had a good background in terms of being exposed to the English language. If you've determined, if you have made up your mind to pursue a management degree and eventually land up in the corporate, eventually start working on the corporate job, I'm saying this from practical experience. I have actually seen some wonderful case studies where people have entered from a vernacular background, and over a period of time with experience, they have picked up the English proficiency. And at this point in time, what is critical to emphasize and focus for everybody is the articulation of thought, and the ability to express effectively. That needs to be the focus. Do not, while you may want to attempt stuff like, and I typically say that, getting exposed to animations, the animated movies of Hollywood. Typically, I have seen the accent is neutral, and the expression is very powerful, the expression is very effective. Those are good opportunities to latch on to steps in improving English proficiency. Obviously, watching news on CNN, Al Jazeera, documentaries that are freely available on YouTube. Typically, the anchors have a neutral accent. They're very, very audible. They're very, very comprehensible. Those are some of the steps that one can undertake to improve the English language proficiency. But the question was that, the point that we were discussing actually was that coming from a vernacular background should not put you at any element or any amount of any sort of disadvantage. Do not have that fear that you are at a disadvantage. Just focus on expression, just focus on articulation of thought, and whenever time permits, do use Al Jazeera, the animated movies, the documentaries as a role model to look up, to try to get that expression in terms of English language proficiency. And over a period of time, you will see the language proficiency along with the thoughts and expressions will improve.
Okay, so sir, one thing that should not be there in business communication, like if you want to improve and if you want to be very good at business communication, what are the few things that should not be there? That's a strict no-no, that these things shouldn't be here if you want to have a very good business communication skills.
Okay. Well, some of the things that, I don't know, I maybe want to answer it the other way around. First of all, a direct answer to your question: what should not to have good communication skills? Do not have any reservations or any kind of complex. Do not have that, because if you come with that complex ki, मेरी तो अंग्रेजी ठीक ही नहीं है तो मैं तो कभी पहुंच ही नहीं पाऊंगा, that needs to be completely eliminated. Because particularly whenever we are doing business communication sessions with the first year students, the emphasis is never on language proficiency. Unfortunately, fortunately, English is the language of the corporate, so a certain amount of proficiency will be required. But I've always kind of promoted to the students that don't have that complex. So coming back to your question, what should not be there? No amount of complex or no amount of hesitation should be there. That's the fundamental, that is key. And in terms of, I'll just flip the tone of the question. What are the things that you need to focus on? To aid, typically they say that 80% of communication is non-verbal and only 20% of the communication is verbal. So, and again, if you are not proficient in terms of thoughts and expression, that non-verbal element will not kick in. The non-verbal element will only kick in once you get confident of your ability to articulate your thoughts and expressions. And I'm not at all talking about English proficiency. I'm totally discounting it. I'm totally keeping it out of the equation. But in terms of stuff that can aid you, is you would need to also start looking at the non-verbal modes of communication. One is your body language. The other which I focus is that the rate of speech. You cannot speak too fast. Your speech has to be in tune with the speed of your thoughts. So you got to relate your rate of speech. That is an element of non-verbal. Your body language, your expression, and another very important element is the intonation or the modulation of voice. So your voice needs to go up and down. It cannot be a static. It cannot be a static pulse. It has to be a wave. It has to be in the form of a wave. So these are some of the nuances. These are some of the elements which are required, along with the ability to articulate your thoughts and the ability to express yourself.
So, sir, how important is non-verbal communication? Like, is it more important than the verbal part, or should we? And how would people work on that? Because it's the verbal part, people would know that, okay, we'll practice and we'll work on it.
Yeah.
But how do you work on the non-verbal part?
See, the non-verbal part is a side effect. So whenever you have a medicine, they say इस दवाई का ये एक side effect है. एक बारी आपने, you've got control over your expression, over your thoughts. Over a period of time, the non-verbal components will automatically kick in. So you will not have to make any extra effort for that. The focus has to be on the ability to articulate your thoughts. That's where the importance is, to be able to frame your response in your mind is the most critical key to business communication. So I would not venture as far as what do I need to do for my non-verbal components. You don't have to do anything. It'll come automatically. You just need to focus on the rate of speech, the ability to articulate. Once you get those right, the non-verbal communication will automatically flow in. So I would not advise or suggest or recommend or discuss anything कि मुझे ये करना चाहिए, except that, keep looking at people who are world leaders. You want to see President Joe Biden. You want to see Mr. Shashi Tharoor when he is speaking. You want to see Mr. Chidambaram when he is speaking. They are prolific orators. They are prolific guys. You want to see Miss Simi Garewal whenever she's talking. You want to listen to Mr. Ratan Tata. You want to listen to Mr. Anand Mahindra. You want to listen to Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Most of the time his speeches might not be in English, but he's a prolific orator. So it just goes back to my point that it's not about the language, it's about the ability to express. And going back to your point, body language, non-verbal के लिए क्या करना है? इन लोगों को देखिए, इनको emulate करिए. For that matter, Hitler, whenever he spoke only in German. But whenever he spoke, just go back to his documentaries in the 1930s, 1940s, they're freely available on YouTube. What powerful expression, what powerful body language, but it all starts in the mind. Yeah. So it's like battles are won and fought in the mind. They're not really fought in the battlefield.
So I think now we have covered all the aspects of effective business communication. I'm sure this conversation will help the ongoing PGDM students who will be taking admissions in the next session. Thank you so much, sir, for having such an enriching session.
Thank you.
I'm sure if you want to know more about such sessions, please follow us.